Alright, so now it's time for the final of the 3 class guides for Might and Magic VIII. Now, 8 works a little bit differently. The races and classes are mixed together, so races are classes, but there are 8 to go through, one of which you cannot get at the start. So, starting off, we have the Knight, and let's go ahead and look right here. Knights can get Grandmaster, Spear, Sword, Plate, Shield, Repair Item, and Arms Master. They can master Bodybuilding, Chain, and Axe. They can get to Expert, Disarm, Trap, Merchant, Perception, Leather, Bow, Dagger, and Staff. They can get Basic Learning and Identify Monster. Champions get 8 hit points per level. I put them at A tier. They are just about as good as they are in 7. The Grandmaster, Arms Master is easier to get. So you can get it a lot earlier. You get an Arms Master item along with Terminus, which is a guaranteed artifact that's +7. And your those do stack together. In fact, artifacts stack together. There's a artifact Fleet Fingers, which you can stack that on top. So you're gonna have very good DPS, hands down the best melee character in the game. Pretty straightforward. Go with I'd say maybe it's better to go swords, just because there's a lot of good artifacts that are swords. But the damage from the spears are actually pretty good, so I think spear probably is better. They also get the plate, once again, damage reduction. So there's an NPC that you can get fairly early on, that's level 50. That's going to be way more power than the rest of your party. Obviously, great damage dealer, but there's another class which I think outranks them in terms of damage. In fact, in addition to dark magic being still better, so I put them at A tier.
Fame and
I'm ready to.
I am the best.
Next we have clerics. Clerics can grandmaster all the self schools, so spirit, mind, and body, and light magic. It can master mace, shield, merchant, and meditation. They can get to expert, chain, leather, repair item, perception, learning, alchemy, and staff. And they get basic bow, arms master, and bodybuilding. Priests of Light, their final promotion, get 3 hit points and 5 spell points per level. I put clerics at A tier. Obviously, light magic, all the buff spells, really good. Gonna increase your DPS by a lot. Healing is body magic is still good. Regeneration has been nerfed, so it's not as great. Obviously, you have perception. Preservation. That's gonna help not dying. Protection from magic isn't as good because there's no instant death, but master is still pretty good. There's only like a few enemies that actually death stare. and you have the healing is still, the regular heal is pretty good still. I mean, if you want a melee party, they're obviously important to have. One thing that kind of puts them lower than 7, in my opinion, is you don't really need them in your party. In fact, you don't really need them at all, but all of the things that you get, like the buffs and everything, because in this game you can remove NPCs. One thing you can do is just remove them from the party, add them to the party, cast all the buff spells, and then remove them again. And then, go and do shit. Which I did that actually in one of my playthroughs. So as far as their individual damage, they're not going to be doing very much. I think really at best maybe they have, like, at high light magic a decent light bolt, but that's about it. But with that being said, the light magic is obviously going to increase your damage and attacking power by a lot, so they're definitely a good class to have for melee parties.
I am the
Choose
my
my strength is the night.
Up next we have Necromancer. They can Grandmaster all the elemental schools: fire, air, water, and earth, as well as dark magic, as well as alchemy and meditation. At Master, they can get to Master Identify Item, Identify Monster, and Staff. They can get to Expert Dagger, Leather, and Merchant. They can get Basic Bow. I don't think they can get anything else. I think I missed something in my notes here. I don't think it was anything important, though. Yeah, it was Perception. That's not really all that important. When they're promoted to Liches, they get Expert Regeneration, and they get 3 hit points and 5 spell points per level at Lich. I put Necromancers at S tier. Dark Magic still really overpowered. OP as hell. Obviously you have Shrapmetal, Armageddon, Dragon's Breath, Soul Drinker. Like, one of the reasons you don't even need a Cleric in the party is they can just heal. The Necromancer can just heal. And this is, of course, in addition to, Town Portal, Lloyd's Beacon, Invis. One thing I forgot to mention in my last playthrough, my last class guide, is enchant item. At Grandmaster, you can enchant items to get a plus 17 bonus to Arms Master. So you just have that immediately with enchant item. You can also get swift weapons pretty immediately as well. Just what I would, the best party, in my opinion, is Necromancer starting off and then getting the 4 dragons by the end of it. Anytime you need to heal, you got Soul Drinker, and then you can just anything. The damage that you're gonna get from buffed out dark magic is gonna be by far the best in the game. Only downside, I guess, is the low hit points, so they're gonna take more hits, but again, you have Soul Drinker, or you can just have a Cleric in the party, or Generation. So yeah, S tier. Not pretty much everything I've said before about the sorcerer is still applies to the Necromancer. So, oh, in addition, they get GM meditation. So they have a lot of spell points and alchemy, which now you don't need druids at all because they don't exist. Now you can make black potions with Necromancer if you really wanted to.
Of course.
You want.
I'm the best.
I can help.
It is me you want.
Up next, we have vampires. Vampires can grant a master dagger and identify monster. They can master the self schools as well as alchemy, regeneration, sword, leather, and shield. They can get to expert, axe, mace, chain, identify item, merchant, and perception. They can get basic, learning, arms master, and bow. When promoted to Nosferatu, they get 4 hit points and 4 spell points per level. They also have vampire abilities. Normal, they get life drain, which I think it does like 1 to 7 damage or something. It's not really all that good. They can cast levitate, which means you can walk over water, lava, and traps without taking damage. You cast charm at master, which is basically the charm spell for clerics, and at grandmaster they can use misform, which means they cannot take or deal physical damage. Basically all you can do really is use life drain in that state, and that's basically it. They can still take damage from elemental damage and magic damage, so they're not completely immune, but to physical attacks they are, which I mean, it's not that great. I actually have vampires at C tier. In my opinion, they're the worst class in the game. They're really awful. There's so many problems. First of all, the promotion is really hard, easily the hardest in the game. It's a 2-parter. Part 1, you have to go to Cyclops Larder, fight Cyclops, which can paralyze. So that's already pretty difficult right there. Plus they do a fair amount of damage. Then you have the Corbu's tomb guarded by great ancient wyverns and ravaged roaming. That's already pain to deal with just because they have the death stare. But once you get in the dungeon, you have these Afrits which cast fireball. That just spam that shit. Yeah, that's gonna kill your party pretty quickly if you don't have good fire res. And ultimately, also the tomb sarcophagus thing is it's like the biggest individual item in like any 6 through 8. Like it takes up the entire width of the inventory, and it's like a third of in terms of height. It's like really annoying if you like to carry a lot of items to make space, or even if you don't, that you have to move shit around just to put in your inventory. And ultimately, for all this work, the class that you're getting promoted isn't really all that good. Dagger, the only thing that vampires get in terms of boosting their damage is the dagger skill, which obviously not really all that great. Triple damage isn't gonna add that much, and this is all they get, period. Like they only get basic arms master, which is basically useless. Like you may as well not have the skill at all. In fact, you might as well not even have it at expert. So no arms master means their DPS is going to be garbage for the entire game. They just can't do they have no means of doing any good damage. The life drain is also weak, so what really does the vampire gonna do? They have self magic, yeah, but it's only master, and that doesn't really matter all that much. Also, they don't have regeneration, so I mean, they do have regeneration, which I haven't talked about. That skill kind of sucks. It's too slow. They don't have meditation, so their spell points is going to be crap. So, it's not very good to make them try to make them a spellcaster. They also don't get bodybuilding, so they're gonna have low HP, low spell points, not really good casters. Their abilities kind of suck, and their damage is gonna be crap. The only thing that you conceivably get that you can argue is decent for vampires is the levitate, but you don't actually need this. There is one dungeon in the game where they have lava that you can't bypass through fly because it's indoors. In which case you can get away with just walking on the walls or jumping to safe spots, so you don't even need it there. Some areas have trapped floors, but if you have perception or you just can remember where they are, then you can avoid that pretty easily as well. And then everything else you can just fly over it. So the levitate is not necessary at all. Mist form, it doesn't really matter because they don't really bring anything. Plus, they only have X Master Leather. They don't get any damage reduction. Like, what do you use vampires for? Basically, the only thing that they are good for is giving them skills that you don't want to waste on another more important party member, like alchemy. If you want to make white potions but you don't want to waste the skill points on a necromancer, you can use vampire. You want to use self magic, you want to be able to cast preservation without wasting the skill points on the cleric. Maybe you don't want to bother leveling up body magic very much. You can get away with protection from magic at master in this game because you're only monsters at master anyway, or at that mostly monsters in this game paralyze. That's the only reason you would get them, so get away with that. But individually, in terms of damage, they do the worst damage out of any party, any class, except maybe for clerics. And even then, clerics, they might, at a high enough light magic, that maybe their light bolt might even do more damage. And this is, and that's at least can be cast at range. And this is in addition to them having, actually useful things like, the light magic and healing. So there's really no reason to get vampires. They are weaker than every other melee class, and they're not really good at anything. Sword master is kind of whatever. Not having arms master really reduces their damage, so this is a class that I was considering even putting at RP tier, but ultimately I think some of the abilities that they have and the ability to use certain skills, if you take them, they're gonna, in this game, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be able to go through any party combination and beat this game, but hands down the worst class. I don't know why anyone likes them or likes to play as them because their damage is just shit, and they're shit at magic, they're shit HP, shit at everything. So I would not. They are way worse than the Minotaur, which we'll get into later. So definitely not a fan of the vampires at all. I don't care what anyone says.
I can have.
Pick me. I'm ready. Let's go.
Up next we have the Dark Elf. They can Grandmaster, Bow, Chain, Disarm Trap, and Merchant. They can master the Elemental Schools, Sword, Dagger, Leather, Identify Item, and Perception. They can get Expert, Repair Item, Meditation, Learning, Alchemy, Arms Master, and Shield. They can get Basic Mace. At promoted to Patriarchs, they get 4 hit points and 4 spell points per level. They also have Dark Elf abilities. At normal, they have Glamour, which increases, reduces costs at stores. Completely useless, especially since you already have Grandmaster Merchant on them. Cast Traveler's Boon, which is just a conglomeration of Torchlight, Wizard Eye, and Featherfall. Also useless, and they only cast it at Expert. Master, they can cast Blind, which makes monsters unable to cast spells. I haven't really played around with this, but it's single target, so it's not really all that great. And then they can, at Grandmaster, they can cast Darkfire, which is a damage dealing spell. It costs a lot of mana, and Dark Elves aren't particularly, they don't have a lot of mana anyway, so it's not really all that great. I put Dark Elves at B tier. They're weak, like they're basically the same problems I had with Archer apply to Dark Elves. The bow is not overrated in some cases. The DPS, the damage is gonna be good, obviously, if you get it like 30, but it costs a lot of investment and basically requires you to get specific artifacts. One of which, like, there's like 2 bows in the game, I think, that will reduce bow skill, or that will give bow skill and reduce the recovery rate. But there's artifact Fleet Finger, which also gives bonus of bow skill, but you don't want to give that to the Dark Elf because it gives Arms Master, so you want to give that to a melee character. You don't want to give it to a fucking bow user. Like, they're not gonna get anything from the Arms Master. And aside from bow, like, they don't really offer anything. They're gonna suck at melee. They only get, I think, expert arms. Expert Arms Master. So yeah, they're completely worthless in melee. They do get the Master Schools, so they at least can cast Town Portal, Invis. You can have a shitty enchant. Sparks. There's actually an NPC that you can get that's level 50. At the start, their promotion is really easy. You can recruit her and actually have Master Air Magic before you get them Master Air on your Necromancers, which is kind of funny, but really all they get is the Merchant doesn't really matter. You're gonna have plenty of money in this game. The Storm Trap is okay, but late game it doesn't really matter too much. Really all their main what they have to bring to the table is the bow, which again, like I said before, it just requires too much investment, and it's also very limited. Once you get in close range, they're going to be pretty useless. You have to always keep a distance, and you can't really do that in some areas indoors, like Eschaton's Crystal, Plane of Fire, so it's also single target and it can miss, so I put Dark Elves at B tier. They can get good damage, but it requires investment and it has a lot of drawbacks, so B tier for Dark Elves.
Select me.
Just like archers and stuff.
Pick me.
I can be helpful.
Next we have the Minotaurs. Minotaurs can Grandmaster Axe and Perception, Master Mace, Spear, Disarm Trap, and Arms Master, Bodybuilding, Plate, Chain, and Staff. You can get to Expert Bow, Dagger, Identify Monster, Merchant, and the Self Schools. They can get Basic, Leather, Learning, and Alchemy. Minotaur Lords can get 6 hit points and 2 spell points per level. Minotaurs are often regarded as the worst class in the game. I completely disagree. I don't think Minotaurs are that bad. Obviously, they're weaker than Knights, but a lot of people compare them to Rangers. They're definitely better than Rangers. In fact, I think you can argue they're better than Paladins in 7, simply because of this right here. Arms Master. This automatically means that they are going to be able to do decent DPS. They only have Master Plate, so the recovery rate is going to be harder to. It's going to take more to get to the minimum recovery. But they do have the damage reduction, which means they're going to be able to take hits well. The recovery penalty from the plate is kind of sucks, but you give this guy enchant item plus 17, belt of Arms Master plus haste, and I would recommend actually not getting axe. I think that the axe, the half damage is bugged, so it doesn't actually do anything. I would just get spear, which again, the master is irrelevant because you can only dual wield with dagger, and that's actually going to lower your damage. So there are a lot of good spears and halberds in the game that you can use. Just get a good Arms Master belt plus haste, and you're already, without plate, you're at the minimum recovery. With plate, you're going to put in, you can enchant for a swift spear and get that immediately. There's also a swift spear artifact if you get lucky, and that's with plate, and you're already at minimum. But even without swift, you can still get get good light magic and put a few more points in Arms Master and get that and even have minimum recovery without swift and with plate. And with the Arms Master, that's going to give them a DPS on par with Troll. In fact, they're going to be a little bit better because spears do more damage than maces. They're not going to have the paralyze, though, so you can argue that they're still worse, but they're definitely not, like the shittiest class. But vampires, they shit on vampires completely in terms of damage. Plus, they still have Master Bodybuilding, so they're not going to have as much hit points, but they're going to have a decent amount of health. And on top of that, they have Master Plate, so they have damage reduction, so in a way they're better than Trolls. They also have Master Disarm Trap, so if you don't have a Dark Elf, these can suffice to disarm most of the traps in the game. In terms of just damage dealing, which really what you're going to be using the melee for, they are going to be competent. Not as good as Knights, obviously. Obviously, you would rather take a Knight than a Minotaur, but if you have them, you're going to be dealing a fair amount of damage. They only get expert at the self schools, but it doesn't really matter anyway, because unless you're Grandmaster, then why even bother with them at all? Like, if you want self magic, just get Cleric. plain and simple. So definitely underrated. I'm not saying that they're obviously great, but obviously they're still B tier in my opinion. They're not as good as knights, but definitely not the worst class in the game. They're definitely way better than vampires.
Great. I will conquer.
Up next we have the trolls. Trolls can grandmaster mace, staff, leather, regeneration, and bodybuilding. They can get to master sword, axe, arms master, and repair item. You can get expert chain, identify monsters, spear, and dagger. They can get basic bow, learning, disarm trap, and perception. They get 8 hit points per level, fully upgraded. I put them at B tier, same tier as Minotaurs. You can argue that they're a little bit better, but in some ways they're worse. One positive is they get Grandmaster Bodybuilding, so they're going to have the most hit points. And the Paralyze ability with Mace, I've talked about this before with Paladins. I don't think it's very consistent. You would need a pretty high level just to start noticing it. You know, it's just kind of like a knight. It's not really, it doesn't really make them on par with knights in my opinion. They still have Master Arms Master, so they still are going to be able to get good DPS. They also get damage bonuses with Mace. They only have Grandmaster Leather, so they don't have plates, which kind of sucks. They're going to deal good damage. They're going to tank pretty well. Regeneration, I think, is kind of crap. I wouldn't bother with it. It's too slow. Again, they're weaker than knights. I would take knights over a troll, but they're gonna be able to get good damage with Arms Master and Mace, and the Paralyze ability is kind of nice. So I would rank them at B tier. There's really nothing more to them, I'd say. So lastly, we have the dragons. Dragons can get Grandmaster Identify Item, Learning, and Perception. They can master Bodybuilding, Identify Monster, Meditation, and Alchemy. You get to Expert Merchant and Regeneration. Upgraded Great Worms get 7 hit points and 3 spell points per level. Dragon ability, normal, they can cast Fear, pretty useless. At Expert, they get Breath Weapon, which is kind of like a Dragon's Breath. When you get a high enough skill, this is pretty good. Not as good as Dragon's Breath on Necromancers, but still gonna do a lot of damage. Master, they cast Fly, basically. So if you don't have a you don't necessarily need the Necromancer to cast Fly. And then Grandmaster, they get this Wing Buffet, which moves enemies away, kinda whatever. I have dragons at S tier. They're really overpowered. Basically, every point in dragon ability gives them, I think, like 2 to 10 damage. You just pump this, and they're gonna basically their attack is gonna shoot this fireball thing like this that is ranged, and it ignores resistances. It doesn't miss, and it's pretty easy to get this skill pretty high. Also, they get it adds to armor class. I mean, there's really not. There's really no other class that's gonna be able to do as much damage as dragons. S tier all the way. Knights maybe can do more damage at melee at some point, but dragon ability is ranged. You don't have to be in close combat, and it always hits. So I would rank them far higher. They also get bodybuilding masters, so they have decent hit points. They get meditation, so they can get decent spell points. They can ID item if you need to, and alchemy as well if you don't want to master, if you don't want to bother with the necromancer. I mean, there's not much else to say. Plus, the dragon breath is still pretty good as well. They can't use any items. That's kind of a drawback, but they don't really need to use items. They still can use equip rings and amulets, so you can give them buffed, like rings of armor class or something like that. So you don't really need to have anything on dragons. They just pump the dragon ability, and you're going to be sitting at a very good amount of damage, and just stomp through basically anything. So dragons, S tier. Not really much discussion to be had right there. So that's going to do it for the class guide for MM8. I might be doing spell guides in the future, maybe skill guide, I'm not sure. But see you guys later.